So we're here today with Bill Shireman and Trammell Crow, Stuart Scott, and I'm Dale Wolkonen. And we are discussing the very fascinating book that Bill and Trammell have written called In This Together. And we'd love to hear from you, Trammell, about how you got interested in this as a Republican. You had an aha moment, I believe, when you suddenly realized that your efforts could go in another direction. Could you tell us about this?
Maybe my introduction to politics might have been when I was 10-ish years old during the campaign for Kennedy and Nixon here in Dallas. And I ran to my father and said, Daddy, are we Republican or are we Democrat? And he wisely said, neither, son. We're conservative. And I didn't quite know what that all meant then. And he was truly an independent. But then through the 60s, as the state became red, he became a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. And the family grew up that way. I'm sure I was a Democrat or more during college. But by the time I graduated, I was a firm believer in free enterprise and social liberal and a fiscal conservative.
And when did you get interested in environmentalism specifically?
Well, 2 years later, when I was 12 years old, my brother had gone off to military school. He had come back in Thanksgiving. So 3 months was a long, long time back then for a youngster. It was kind of a Norman Rockwell moment. He was standing there in his spit shine shoes and his uniform. And he taught me 3 words: population, environment, and politics. And for some reason, it was a aha moment. And from that very moment, environment was the most important thing in the world to me. And population, you know, an integral part of that.
You gave a lot of money to political candidates over years, but at some point you seem to have become disillusioned with that whole political process. Citizens United has given us, you know, the capability to influence any amount of money into campaigns. How are you dealing now with campaigns and politics?
I was full up to here about 5 years ago that these things are, well, canceling each other out and just really purposeless, and that those monies should go towards healthy democracy and causes.
Well, I will admit here that once upon a time I was a lobbyist for the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, which is a lot to say. So I know a bit about the game. I was in Albany. And I found that politicians would take our bills, they were wonderful greenwashing, and then not pass them. This was the favorite, you know, I did it, I supported it, and it just didn't work because they didn't want it to work, of course. And it was quite an eye-opener for me. I wonder if you've trod the halls of Congress at all and attempted to influence politicians.
Well, I have, and to the same end as you, mainly from the Republican side. And so it's been a sometimes sincere and sometimes not.
Well, I found that, of course, money was always on the other side for us. But now money basically runs our government, and it's very hard to imagine how we're going to get that influence out of government. How are we going to wrest back politics that was politics for the good of the people rather than for the special interests? And I believe that's something that you're really addressing in your EarthX process.
The political system needs to be reformed, and from gerrymandering to mail-in ballots. Before we can solve the environment, we have to have a political process that works.
And I'm a critic of the IPCC because they are always supporting the idea, oh, we've got time, we haven't. And their latest special report in September of last year, which shocked people, said we only have 12 years more. And my criticism of them was. Now, it did good because all of a sudden people were saying, oh, that's the strongest thing they've ever said. But we don't have 12 years more. We basically have to scramble back up the waterfall, is the way I see it, when you figure as big as the climate system is and how we've succeeded in pushing it to where it's giving us, it's just shooting hurricane after hurricane towards the Gulf of Mexico, and then the Baja California is shooting hurricane after hurricane like ping pong balls at the Hawaiian Islands. You get that it's already happening. So we've already unleashed it. So the question is, how do we reform politics and deal with climate change at the same time? Now,
Mhm.
EarthX, I know, was a, shall we say, an equivalent of Bioneers. It was a celebration, say, of the middle ground, bringing together under one tent of a political social divide under one theme.
Thank you for understanding. We see Earth Day as the essence of voluntarism. We see ourselves as a platform for everybody to come to. We have some initiatives on our own, but EarthX TV is, we're on our 6th week now. You mentioned weather earlier. We haven't started this program yet, but we'll have in the morning the extreme weather report.
And are you aware of the earth.knowlschool.net wind maps,
No.
the global wind maps?
No.
Oh, this would be a good addition.
You can see the past weather and you can see the present weather, and you can see
But-
the patterns that are happening.
Okay. Now you're looking, when you go to earth.knowlschool.net, you come up with this globe, which roughly speaking puts you at the equator, about where the host of the conversation is. And I'm the host, so LA is where I am for a few days more. But down here is the menu. And what you're viewing now, before I reconfigure it with a click, what you're viewing is the wind speeds at the surface of the planet, okay? But if you click on Earth and you click on under height, 250, it's an inverse scale because it's lower pressure the higher you go. What you're looking at now is the stratosphere, where the jet stream, the Arctic and Antarctic jet streams exist. And a lot of the extreme weather events that we see lately can be explained in terms of these jet streams, which act like wind curtains in front of department stores. They hold warm air in or out. The jet stream used to follow a rather narrow band going, viewed from the top, from the North Pole. It would always go counterclockwise. But now you're seeing it getting down almost to the equator in places, okay? And that is completely unusual. So here you've got the Arctic jet stream is getting very close to the equator off of Africa, and I'm sure they're experiencing very, very cold winter in North Africa. It's meteorology to the next level. Literally.
Extreme weather report.
Yeah, exactly.
What else would you put on that?
On your extreme weather report? Well,
Parts per million,
Well,
ozone.
possibly the methane that's being released into the atmosphere in the Arctic and Antarctic, possibly the fires and what level they are burning at, and possibly the agricultural devastation that's occurred because of floods and drought.
well, I would love to, at the risk of signing up for another thing, my second in command, Cynthia Riddle, I asked to close the door because I didn't want her to hear if I committed myself to another thing. But I will commit myself to working with your EarthX TV people and maybe advising what they might include. Because on the daily program I run at the annual, except for this year, the annual UN negotiations, I for a while was trying to do a daily climate report, and we would highlight in one program where all the fires were occurring, and in another program where the unusual flooding was occurring, because those kinds of things, if you gather them from around the planet, a pattern starts to emerge. So these are things that are probably relevant to establishing for that 70% in the middle that climate change is real in here. Okay, and we shouldn't be debating about whether it's real. We should be solving, we should be looking for interventions that will help fix it, which is what you gentlemen stand for.
But that fuzzy line between extreme weather and climate.
Yeah, exactly. They're extreme weather and climate. Yeah, the daily climate report. You can have the daily weather report. Everybody does a daily weather report. But if you have the daily climate report, then you're looking at it from a different perspective.
I think it would be wonderful, though, to have the extreme weather report or the bad weather report, because everybody does look for the weather, and you'll have climate activists who will check the climate, but if we want to bring in millions of everyday Americans, let's give them the weather in a new form, and the bad weather report, the extreme weather report, where they can actually find out what the weather is, but they can see these fascinating depictions that show them with no lack of certainty that the weather is changing.
Incontrovertible.
Incontrovertible. Thank you.
I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit, and Bill talked himself out for an hour, but I want to draw you both back into it. I want to switch from government, from politics, and God knows we haven't said enough about that phase, but I want to switch to social media, because social media has maybe supplanted the fifth estate, news media, as how we get our news. I mean, Reddit calls itself what does it call itself? The front page, the world's front page. So Facebook, how many billion people are on Facebook? 3 billion, something?
Yeah, 30% of the planet at any one time, I hear.
But,
Wow.
Facebook perpetuates the divisiveness, because that's what attracts more money. So it's the same problem as politics. If you can create bubble chambers and communities that only want to hear what their own pundits have to say, then you can ask for money for ads, ads from whatever organizations want to fund that bubble chamber. So how do we get the social media to come under this tent with us, under the EarthX tent? Have you got any ideas about that?
Well, yes, we do have some ideas. Here's the problem we face. As we know, politics has always been a bit of a game, a bit of an industry, a bit of a sport. And it has always involved divide and conquer tactics. But never before social media and the advent of big data were we able to fool ourselves so completely with our political communications structure. When I was a kid, and not long ago, we had a media that actually made decisions about what stories were important and not. And we would get a newspaper, and it would have the editor's opinion about what was important, that would also attract sales and serve their journalistic purposes while also selling advertising. Now we have a self-generated front page that we all create for ourselves. We create it based on what we fear most. We click on what we fear may be true, and that's what appears on what we see as our new front page. It's all self-generated. It's not delivered to us by somebody that's imagining it. It's self-generated. It's self-generated though because of those algorithms whose objective to maximize profit is to get the most clicks by the most minds that are relatively undisciplined and unchallenged. because we're watching things that we already believe and we're selling the people. Here's how we get out of that. First of all, don't blame the social media companies or the big data companies or the big media companies or the political strategists or any of us, because we're all in this together. We all are the problem. And we all have a little bit of the solution. Now we're used to saying, well, I'm only one person. I need these big companies to make a change. And it's true. But 5 million of us, if we ask the brands that we love most, the retailers where we shop most, to get their advertising and the advertising of all of their suppliers out of the algorithm of hate and into the algorithms that attract us on the basis of our hopes and our aspirations, then we will transform the advertising industry and it'll transform the social media industry, and it'll be a favor to them. Now, we have tested methods like this, and we know that you can advertise successfully on the basis of people's higher angels than their lower demons. But it does take commitment. All we need is 5 million people to make the decision that they're going to work with their retailers and brands through which everybody who sells anything to us has to flow, and we change the system. So that's how we do it.
We're still involved in an overproduction, over-consumer economy, and the fact that we consume so much is in itself a problem. Whether we consume good things or bad things, we're still taxing the earth with our consumption. So the consumptive nature of our society that developed after World War II, as you point out in your book, and after the Depression, we got this idea, if we don't produce, we're going to go back into that depression, and that fear is always in the back of our minds. So how do we stop, producing and consuming so that we can let the earth rewild itself and the animals recover and all the things that we want to have happen?
Starting in World War II and thereafter, we began to think of ourselves as producers and consumers. Those were our two lives. Husbands went out and they produced. They, did the work. Wives, stayed at home and went shopping, and they consumed. And that became the definition of what a citizen was. A citizen was no longer a mother, a father, a caring person who loves others and lives out something that comes from within them that's purposeful. We're just producers and consumers. And to do our job, we better produce a lot of stuff, and then we better consume it all. We better consume 3% more every year, year after year, or we're all going to die. That's the fear that lies behind this consumer movement. Now, we all know that that's crazy, but we're stuck in a social, mental illness, a kind of neurotic consumerism that is enforced by the political industry because it is so profitable to extract a little money from this overproducing system. So what happens when the larger system begins to tell us that we're really overshooting and we have an economic, decline? We panic and we shove as much money through the system as we can to get us consuming again, right? And so we go out, we buy stuff we don't need, that doesn't last as long as it should, because we're so afraid of what will happen if we stop doing it. Well, that's insane. At some point, we have to shift from a consumption economy to an economy that is a creative economy. We have to realize that we are not consumers. Fundamentally, we are creators who do consume so that we can live and create.